There were reports over the weekend that RFK Jr. was seeking a position in a possible Trump administration, maybe as head of Health and Human Services. But in an interview with Piers yesterday, he criticized Trump for filling his previous administration with corrupt corporate figures, according to him. Let's watch.
I would say that the Democratic Party no longer has any authentic relationship with the American middle class. The Democratic Party I knew as a boy that represented cops and firefighters and working people is gone. And then the Republican Party has all kinds of problems with their own. President Trump, who got a huge boost from the assassination attempt, and I commend him for his courage and his leadership during that very, very challenging time. He announced yesterday, according to the New York Post, that he is choosing between Jamie Dimon, who's the head of Morgan, and Larry Fink, who's the head of BlackRock, as his Treasury Secretary. And this is, I think people cannot take seriously his promise that he's going to drain the swamp. If he actually once again brings these swamp creatures in to run our government, BlackRock is American middle class is not fond of BlackRock, and they see, all of the machinations, its role in the war in Ukraine, where it's got not only the contracts, because it owns all the military contractors, to blow up Ukraine, all the bridges and ports and schools and hospitals, but it also has the contracts to rebuild Ukraine. And, it owns the credit card companies that are bankrupting Americans, that are charging 32%. All of the economic problems that we have, which are the result of this systematic strip mining of wealth from the American middle class and sending it upward to this new oligarchy of billionaires. It's all been orchestrated by BlackRock, and to bring them in to run the Treasury is not, I think it sends a bad signal. I think it's going to be a vulnerability for President Trump.
So there he was, going after Trump. I mean, praising him for how he responded to the assassination, which I agree was courageous and has contributed to maybe rising political fortunes. It's fantastic that he was not killed, and the failures of the Secret Service must be dealt with. And in fact, Kimberly Cheadle has now resigned, as we announced in an earlier segment. But saying that, if the Republican Party wants to be the party of the working class of everyday people, and break from its past perception as a kind of organization that not only is just rewarding or helpful to the rich, but is sort of actively, and this is something both parties do when they get into government, is like changing the rules. Because I'm for free markets, and I'm fine with businesses flourishing, and I want less regulation. But when they put the business people in charge of setting the rules and regulations, then they end up, they can enrich themselves, and then you can have a playing field that is not level, where the most well-connected business kind of figures can make their own lives better and their own firms better. And I think what he was saying there is that is every bit what you could expect from a Jamie Dimon or a Larry Fink, being some of the wealthiest, most influential and powerful business people in the world. They're going to be writing the Treasury Department policies. Will those be policies that benefit everyone, that lift rising tide lifting all boats, or will those be policies that are specifically good for BlackRock?
Right. I think RFK Jr. just needs to stay in the race. He does not need to drop out and endorse anyone. He doesn't need to make any deals to get a cabinet position. He needs to be in the race to say things like this, to be criticizing both parties for being friends with the ruling class, the vampire class of the country. He is right to say BlackRock, which is a financial firm that makes money off of pooling a bunch of money and investing in America's biggest corporations. They have a vested interest in corporations doing very well. That means wages being low and prices being high. It also means things like potentially prolonging the war in Ukraine and lobbying for that, because that's something that they will profit off of, as he pointed out. And regular families that can't make ends meet, A big part of this is rent increases. BlackRock has a ton of real estate investments. And a big part of this is they've taken on debt in order to make ends meet. And now a part of paying their regular bills is paying off interest. He's right to point that out as well. And we just don't see establishment Democrats or Donald Trump talk about this. And so saying a Trump presidency this time around can't be, again, hiring people from this ruling class, this vampire class. And there's a difference between business people who own small businesses and medium-sized businesses, and these people who own and run the major businesses in the country and are honestly running the country into the ground. You can't say you're an administration for the people and have those people in your administration. So he needs to be on the outside criticizing that and maybe make a deal with Trump, say, I'll endorse you if you promise not to put any of these people in your administration.
Yeah, there was reporting, obviously, over the weekend that they had some kind of conversation, and we played a clip of their phone call they had right after the assassination attempt that was recorded and leaked against RFK Jr.'s wishes, and he apologized to Donald Trump that they did that. Trump, in that phone call, there was no explicit promise made. It sounded like perhaps they were possibly going to discuss or come to some kind of arrangement that if RFK Jr. was going to support Trump, that he would get something out of it. But no, I think he should absolutely remain in the race, and it sounds like he intends to remain in the race. And he's not. And Democrats they've jumped all over this narrative. They're like, oh, he's here to help Trump, and he's just trying to make it so Democrats can't win. But again, he's pulling voters, and the closer he seems to Trump, the more likely he is to actually pull voters from Trump. So if you're a Democrat, it doesn't actually even make sense for you to want him out of you should want him in the race if you think he's actually a secret figure of the right and is only appealing to people on the right. Of course, that's not actually the case. He appeals to some people on the right. He appeals to some people on the left. He appeals to some people in the center. He appeals to some libertarians. He appeals to some people who are just not going to vote for any other candidate, want an outsider. And I think he is having an important impact in the race, talking about some things that, don't get mentioned, like what is the financial incentive for people who will be profiting from the Ukraine war? War is not profitable or good overall for society, but the firm that literally manufactures the weapons, well, it's good for them, and they should not have say over our policy, but do they? And those are important questions to ask. So I'm glad he's still in it, raising those questions, and as I've said before, it was just inexcusable to not have him in that debate that will now go down in history as the debate that ended Joe Biden's quest for a second term. If they do end up doing another debate, I think the possibility of doing it is now up in the air again because Trump kind of said, I had agreed to debate Joe Biden, not Kamala Harris. Why don't we do it on Fox News? So again, if the rules are up for discussion about what the debate would be, again, RFK Jr. should be in it.
And right now, people are very afraid of political extremism. What they really mean when they say this is on the right, they're afraid of communism, which they describe as this sort of authoritarian government where the government controls the economy, and it's bad. That's what you have when people from BlackRock are serving in an administration. And what do you have the fear of on the left? You have the fear of fascism, the merging together of the corporation and the state. We're describing the same things. Whether or not these are the real definitions, the accepted definitions among Marxists, or the accepted definitions among followers of Mussolini or what have you, I really think that we have common ground in all not wanting this to be reality, and the fact that neither of the major parties, neither of the front-running candidates have talked about this is a crisis. And that's why RFK Jr. is never going to get accepted by either major party, is because he's willing to call that out.
We will be back with more Rising right after this.